CodeSandbox. Okay, I need to code in CodeSandbox. Don't worry, I'm champ in that. No, we have to design system design of CodeSandbox. What? Yes, you heard it right. Welcome back to Check the System Design series. In this episode, we are going to cover system design of CodeSandbox. To make it more interesting, we have Muskein from the Microsoft to conduct the mock interview with us. Sounds interesting? So keep watching this episode till the end. We have a lot of fun and learning is waiting for you. Before we move on, just say check the system design and subscribe the channel right now for the upcoming awesome content. Okay, so today we have Muskein with us. He's a senior software engineer at Microsoft. Previously, he was working with the Flipkart. He has a vast knowledge in terms of the front end. He has worked on the mobile app drastically. He's majorly taking, you can say, a lot of conferences he has attended. He has given multiple talks, multiple meetups. He have given multiple sessions. He have conducted across the globe for thousands of people. Okay, so today Muskein is with us. He's going to give a mock interview with us. It's our pleasure to have him on board and share his experience. What is his thought process behind taking giving an interview, being an interviewee instead of interviewer this time? And yeah, Muskein, would you like to share share something about yourself?
Yeah, I'm absolutely excited to be a part of Chakde front-end design, system design, front-end design. I think this is a dire need for people to know about what is required as a front-end engineer, what it takes to be a part of system design, what all can you do in front-end system design. There are a lot of content out there for people who are back-end heavy. Front-end heavy folks have a hard time when they're trying to interview. So thanks to Chirag for conducting this. Thanks to Chirag for having me here. And I hope I'm able to give out something for people to learn. And I myself am going to learn a lot. So excited for this.
Cool. So this is going to be very, very interesting. Any guesses, Muskein, what we are going to have today? Any idea what we are going to take a mock interview on?
I know for sure that it's going to be something popular because that's the only kind of content that I'm able to answer about. Baki to fir I'll definitely lose out.
Chalo, we are going to have something like as we are techie, right? So we will not dive
Yeah.
into the product. We will going to make something technical altogether so that other people who are techie who wanted to leverage on the same side will get a lot of benefit.
Awesome.
So what we are going to
Awesome.
start with, we are going to design a code sandbox altogether in this interview. So are you excited?
Yes, and scared as well. So yes. So yes.
So I have shared you a link. You have the references basically. So probably whatever we are going to have, we are going for to note it down what we are going to have. We are going to design front-end system design for CodeSandbox. Okay. So what we are going to expect today, I'm just going to brief you, Muskein. So first of all, we will try to cover the requirement part. When we say requirement, we wanted to go in both the depth, like what is the functional requirement and non-functional requirement. So non-functional is mostly from the tech point of view, and like functional requirement is majorly from the product side of view, right? We wanted to cover, yeah, we will be doing some scoping where obviously everything can't be implemented in a single shot. Then we will be getting into the tech choices. If you have to design the same thing, what tech choices you will be making basically. After that, we will be going into the implementation part. So we will be getting some of the pieces of the application and we will be diving into if you have to implement the same thing, how you are going to do that.
Interesting. Okay. And this all is going to be focused on front end, right?
Yes.
Majorly.
This is majorly going to be front end, and we'll see if required, we will touch upon some of the thing on the back end, but mostly it's going to be front end heavy.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Okay. So I have some initial thoughts that I'd like to share. We have used CodeSandbox quite a lot. And for me, when I think of requirements, I'll also take some time to think about it. But mostly when I think of requirements, I think of what is the USP of CodeSandbox, right? What is it that it provides that others we were lacking before CodeSandbox came into play, right? So one of the things that it gives us very easy to start something. So it's like it gives us templates, right? So one of the things I want to write down. Yeah. functional requirements. I'll write down under functional. It gives us, you know, templates to start quickly, right? And it's very much has support for a lot of languages, right? So let's say JavaScript, TypeScript, Node, Vue, hundreds of other things. You can do it with Parcel, you can do it with Webpack, things like that. So I think that it has a good language support. So, and I'm sure it has support for other things as well that I've not really checked until now. What also CodeSandbox gives is when I do a traditional app web development or app development using, let's say, my own editor, I don't see a preview in front of me. It's very hard to be around that. So I open a browser, check it out, and have to minimize my screen. But CodeSandbox gives me that real preview of things happening in real time. So it's like real time preview of my app or website, whatever, right? That is something that's there. The other thing that also it gives, it lets me edit my code in place. So there is a code editor, right, which has a lot of things, and then because I am doing a lot of my code development in there, I also see that I can debug my code. So let's say debugging code in the sandbox itself, right? I'll call it sandbox, and that means that I have a lot of console capabilities, right? And other things, and other things. Okay, let me think. It also lets me, from what I've seen, it also lets me link to my GitHub or GitHub. So basically I can publish a repository out of it. Right, I can publish a repository out of it, I can commit to it and things like that. Right, and and this is mostly functional. I also have login access. So basically I can link it to my Google email or GitHub ID or whatever. So it helps me save my templates, save my drafts, save my work that I've done until now. And one thing that I've also seen CodeSandbox being used is for pair programming.
Cool.
Right? Where you have, like, this kind of interview could have been conducted on CodeSandbox as well, right? If you were purely into coding,
Definitely.
right? You can see the preview and things like that. And it also gives me support for extensibility. Right, so it is not tied on, let's say, things like, okay, I can't edit, I can only edit this much part of my code. It gives me the complete code. So let's say I want to edit index.html or JS or CSS, whatever. So I have complete ownership of my code. And
when you say ownership, what exactly you mean by, like, you have multiple files in your project, right? So how that ownership is basically visible on the CodeSandbox? Like,
okay, by ownership, I mean that, let's say, I am not just changing my JavaScript and CSS file and the basic entire system is hidden from me, right? I have visibility into what are the packages that are there in my template, what is the index.html that is being served, or the HTML that is being served for this route. So I can eventually build up a complete app out of CodeSandbox because I have it's like I have the complete repository with me, right? So it's not really like a fraction of what I can do on VS Code. It's complete solution that I can do on VS Code as well when I do on my local. And that brings me to a good point that we have a file explorer as well, where you can add, move around files, move around folders, things like that, and a very intuitive way to add, remove packages. So you can customize your packages as way as you want, like it's something on top of package or JSON, and do something like that. And I think that there's one more thing that I'd like to cover, which is I can actually end up deploying this as well.
okay.
Right? Deploying integrations with Netlify, Vercel, and things like that. Right? So that is really nice. I'll try to break it down into functional and non-functional. I just wrote down whatever came to my mind.
Definitely it works. I like the way you have structured from the very granular and through to the final web application, basically where it can be used and deployed and people can access it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Take a pause. Let's see. Before we move on into the non-functional requirement, let's quickly see what are the functional requirement that just Muskein discussed, right? So first one is the login, the authorization basically, and you can be logged in user and you can be a guest user. If you have wanted to guest user, directly create over there. If it is a logged in user from here, so I'm going to be a logged in user. I'm going to log in with the my GitHub repo. Once I'm logged in, you can see there are an option to edit the existing, you can say, sandboxes which I have created. You can create a new sandbox altogether. Let's see what are the options that we have while creating a new sandbox. When we opt for that, we have option to select different language library framework that you wanted to like start with. And just to highlight couple of more important thing, in this case most of the sandboxes are based on the JavaScript, but you might have seen other IDs, or you can say online coding platform. Take an example of Lead Code, where you can select for the language, and basically opting the language you can actually code in the respective languages, right? All of them can be done. It's work on the same funda. But in this case we can see we have React vanilla JavaScript. We can also have application which are backend based, like Node.js. We can also see there are application based on the Fastify starter, right? There are so many things that we have out of box over here. In this example we are going to take the React application. When you click on the React application, we can see our IDE is open and we are ready to basically work on it. So there are a couple of things to highlight which are very important. On the left hand side we have our file manager, where we can actually create, edit on any of the file basically, or we can create a new folder altogether. On the mid side we can see we can basically edit anything. On the right hand side we can see there is a preview. Most interesting thing, there are a couple of features that I wanted to highlight. If you're changing anything, you see your code reflects on the right hand side then and there. So like it's an instant real time preview that we are having, right? So it's available on certain domain as well. It has certain functionalities, like you can check on the console also. You have React dev tool. Basically you can basically do debugging how you used to do on your local ID. All sort of things are available over here. On top of it, there, if you wanted to add more dependencies, like in package.json you wanted to install more dependencies, there is an option to call like add dependency. You can search for that and you can import more dependencies. Like I'm searching for anything code mirror sort of thing, you can just search, you can click on that, and that's how you will get all those dependencies over here. On top of it, the certain things that was highlighted in terms of the deployment, you can actually deploy your code into any of your own environment. Either you have account on the Vercel or the Netlify, or you wanted to deploy on the GitHub pages, you decide, and basically you can deploy it from here in just a click, right? So all those configuration can be done. So yeah, let's dive into non-functional requirements.
When I say non-functional, it is like, as CodeSandbox, what would I give to someone which is not visible on the platform but is behind the scenes happening a lot, right? So when I think of that, I think I will have to give them very fast real-time, updates. Very fast real-time updates. I would have to give them performance, let's say very low latency, which is actually covered in the first point as well. So very low latency, high on performance, right? And another thing that I would want to do is I would want to support latest tech, right? If something new comes up, I would want to build new sandboxes, new templates for them, right? So that they get on things like that. As a system, I would want authorization, authentication and authorization, so that people can, come up and view their own things. Then I would give things like theming, right? Let's say CodeSandbox today is very dark mode, but you can also switch to light mode or things like that. So UI enhancements, I would call it UI enhancements. UI enhancements like theming. Then there is, let's say, drag and drop, right? For the file explorer and things like that. And what else? Yeah, I think one more thing that I would like to talk about is support, right? Where all do you support? Do you support only web desktop browsers? Do you support mobile browsers? Do you have an app presence? So things like that, right? Device support.
When you say support, it is for the CodeSandbox or the final output or the application that is being generated. What type of support you wanted to mention over here?
Interesting. So when I thought of it as when you use the sandbox, but what is the end result of it? Also a very interesting point. Like, do you? I think that is on to the owner, right? How they want to develop things, because it's your app. You can do whatever you want. But what as code sandbox, what I can do is I can give them some pathway to build a responsive web app. Right? Okay, build a responsive one. Your link should work. This if this is how you do it, your link will work both on desktop and mobile very well. Right? So that is something that I can start with as a template. Any template will have that kind of thing, but obviously I'll give you capability to tweak around, do multiple things on that. So it's up to you. Up to somebody who uses CodeSandbox. So when I think of device support, I think of the sandbox layer, right? Where you build apps. Yeah, so let me go through this one more time and see if I missed something. Templates to start quickly. We have language support. We have real-time preview. Okay, we have code editor. Do you want me to go into detail for each of these, or at a broader level, these are okay?
Right now, we can go into a broader level, but yes, there are a couple of things we will dive into.
Okay, sure. So pair programming, support for extensibility. I think we also saved, so that goes into my profile. I think that there's one more thing, which is a requirement, which is I can build and eject and start building something out of my own, out of CodeSandbox. So for people who want to do offline development, right? Actually, this is a very good point. I should have written down that my functional requirement is that I'm an online editor, right? This is a very crucial starting point for me. That CodeSandbox is an online editor.
Yeah.
If I have to support offline, I'll go into eject and mode, and then I'll have to do it.
Do you see any challenges in terms of security when you are saying your code is actually running on some different environment altogether, like CodeSandbox, right? And you can write any sort of code.
Can you come again?
So you are using CodeSandbox, right? Where you are allowing user to write the code, where they can write any sort of code inside the code editor. Do you see any security concerns that you should be aware, or you should have basically in the CodeSandbox when building it, or any security stuff that comes to your mind when you talk about CodeSandbox, where actually you are writing the code? The biggest challenges in your web application are mostly like we try to avoid certain things as in code to be executed, and this is a platform where the entire code is getting executed, right?
Correct. I sort of get your question. I think, but because when CodeSandbox gives a preview, or when it's actually deploying or hosting or showing it to you, right? It hosts it on a separate URL, and for the CodeSandbox layer, it will throw it up in an iframe, right? So whatever you do at, let's say, in that layer, in that HTML, in that JavaScript, you are injecting something, you're doing script injection or something like that, XSS or whatever, you will only be impacting your iframe and not the sandbox layer, right? Because it's actually a sandbox, honestly. Right? So that way, CodeSandbox is secure. But again, like we discussed about other things like about responsive design, we could tell our fellow developers, okay, this is something that you wouldn't want to use, right? Because we have the capability of using our own editor, using our own systems, that we can tell them things that work well, we can tell them things that don't work well, because we kind of will be governing the system on
it. I think anything that else you wanted to highlight in the requirement, like functional, non-functional? I think we have a good list over here. Wait, let's quickly see the non-functional requirement just Muskein talked about. Okay, let's dive into that. Okay, the first one first, like obviously your application should be performant enough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to reload. Let's quickly see how fast it is. So I just clicked on reload, and it is loading. There is a progressive loader on your right hand side, the preview and everything, and it loaded, right? It is very fast. So how can you make an experience where your first load and the subsequent load are very fast? You have to take dive into that, right? Second thing is like preview. It is very important when someone is actually trying to make an application, how fast he can see the changes he is making on the ID on the preview side, which you can see on the right hand side. So in this case, it is a CodeSandbox. If we say it is system design and we say it is Chakde system design, right? So if you notice, when I stopped typing after, like just after that, it was visible on the right hand side. So how we can make this preview more and more optimized, right? There are certain more things in terms of the theming. So when I say theming, it's more about you go into the profile, there is a call appearances, and there is a color theme. So basically you can choose among the different color themes which are available, and how you wanted to basically have those theming capabilities enriched in your like a code editor when you are developing it all together, right? So maybe I'm changing it to atom 1. So you see it becomes light altogether. If I go and change back to the theme which I am looking for, preferences, color theme, and it was Codesanbox 2021, right? So these theming, so everything was supported out of box, just changing some configuration theme file, and it supported, right? A few things in terms of security. When I say security, it's more about, say, suppose if I wanted to get the cookies of Codesanbox all together inside my application which I am going to develop, right? So you see, you don't have anything over here. What I meant by, if I just type cookie, and you see we don't have any cookie, we can't access the cookie from the website or web application which you have created. The things which are present on the Codesanbox, the cookie and everything of the Codesanbox can't be accessed, right? The security is something which we have to think through. So these are some cool non-functional requirements which are important, and obviously we'll be talking about the deployment, how the deployment can be done out of the box. These are the things that we are going to dive more and more in the upcoming episode. Let's try to scope it down. So a couple of things that I wanted you to basically discuss about, I will just roll out on that, and then you can tell if certain things you wanted to go into the detail, right? So I want one thing, you to focus on the online editor, which is definitely one part. Second is related to your like code editor we have discussed. File manager is something which wanted to get into. Third thing basically is your preview part, how your console and how your debugging is basically working. So these are the couple of features that definitely I wanted you to dive into. And then in terms of the UI enhancement, probably we will go into the detail of like drag and drop sort of thing, right? We will talk about the deployment, how the GitHub integration are being done. These are the critical things that I'm looking for. Rest, if you wanted to dive into other thing, you can basically jot it down in the scoping, and we will scope it down and we will start from there.
Sure. Makes sense. So I kind of have a similar idea that when it comes to scoping, we should only pick up P0 items. So we have online editor, we have, let's say, some templates, which is I think easier to do, not that much. Language support, I think will be okay. Let's say if we start with a few languages, we don't want to discuss that. We want real-time preview. We want the code editor, which is something that we want, and debugging code in the sandbox. We wanted file explorer, right? And maybe if time permits, we will get into debugging code, but that I think is an optional thing, in my opinion.
Sure.
Because anyway you're running it in browser, so starting point you can still do a lot of browser stuff as well. But this is interesting. Okay. When it comes to non-functional, I don't think even while I'm starting, I'll compromise on my performance and latencies, right? I'll want to keep them performance as very high and latency is very low. So I'll keep that as a starting scope. And like we said, we'll do some UI enhancements on the way to make sure our product is catchy. So let's say drag and drop and some kind of themes, right? If time permits. So this is something that I would focus on starting with.
Okay. Would you also wanted to touch upon the deployment side of thing, the GitHub integration?
Yes. So let's say we deploy some integration, deployment integrations. I will not say like we need to do all of them. GitHub Netlify as well, whatever. But at least the process of how it would happen, that is something that I would like to discuss.
Perfect. So this is a good list, I think. I think it's time to dive into the stuff that we have written basically before moving into the tech choices, so that we have a better visibility. Yeah. So let's try to dive into the what are the things that you wanted to have on the editor side. What are the things you wanted to have the file explorer? Let's try to dive into these module and pinpoint the features that you wanted to like work upon. What you see like CodeSandbox should basically provides, right? So if you are building your own CodeSandbox, what are the major things that you feel as a feature? These are the must-have you should have in your application, right? Because you wanted to build your web tool as close as possible what VS Code or any offline IDE is basically providing, right? If you are not getting that experience, then that disjoint happens and the adoption basically reduces.
I absolutely agree with you. So one of the things that I'm thinking of is when I think of online editor, I do not really have to make an online editor by myself. Like VS Code has a web version, so I don't know if that will be compatible, but I'll just list down the features that I would want, and then depends on whether I'll use my own or build something that already exists.
Perfect.
Right. First thing that I would focus on, which really helps in VS Code, is code completion, auto completion. So it is aware of what is happening, and so when I say on code auto completion, it works really well with TypeScript, right? So I, as a front-end developer, support for type languages will make it all the more better, right? So this is a support that I would definitely look for, and there is then I would do some kind of extension support, right? Because when VS Code, we do a lot of extensions. We add Prettier, we add ESLint, things like that, right? That make our life a little easier.
Yeah.
So we should have some kind of extension support, and autocomplete. Okay, suggestions comes under code suggestion or highlighting, also comes under this. So I think that is also a part of extensions. You can have multiple extensions that do all of these things, scan through the code and figure out what all can be done inside the code. So that is one of the capabilities that I would build on, right? Also, maybe future support, I would want terminal, right?
Yeah.
Because VS Code internally integrates a terminal. So
when you say terminal, you want a terminal where you can actually run the command as you have in your like desktop, right? Or laptop. Sure, makes sense.
So that VS Code also kind of has that. So that is what I think. And similar UI to VS Code, because that is what most front-end developers today use. Let's say you have a problem section, you have an output section in the window. So that kind of is what I'll keep in my code, right? Editor. And we were also discussing online editor. Code editor is kind of same, so I'll just copy paste and move it there. Yeah, okay. And when it comes to file explorer, what I'll do is I'll have again support for multiple file systems, file types. Right? When I say file types, it could be .js, .html, CSS, other than those things, right?
What differentiation it can create when you say different file type? What actually like things will matter when you have different file type?
What things will matter when you have different file types is when you are writing a TypeScript file, right? I know that I would actually, I don't know, at a CodeSandbox layer, I wouldn't put that knowledge into the system that, okay, TypeScript file, you will have to compile it. That is for the user to, add a package for TypeScript, have a command and then run it. But as a starter kit, I would include those things, right? TypeScript will get converted into JavaScript and then get deployed to somebody else. So I would also give some template, but I will not hard code that solution into my sandbox that, okay, I will decide what to do with TypeScript files, right? And because somebody could use a different TypeScript version that in my template, change that and things like that, right? So things could change. So, but support file types would be definitely helpful when I do imports and stuff like that. So that helps. Then I will support file creation, deletion, and not just file, it also folder, right? File folder, creation and deletion. right? And this is where my drag and drop could come in, right? Like I said, moving around files like you do in VS Code, file creation, deletion, rename, things like that, right? So this is the kind of things that I would do. What else? What else? What else? I think, and creation, deletion, rename, moving around, drag and drop could help in moving or copying. Actually, one more thing that I would like to do out here is, because File Explorer is something that's centric to any developer, right? They use OSs, right? At the end, they use OSs, Windows or Mac or whatever. The file system is centric to all developers. So we have a bunch of commands that we use. Okay, when we are trying to copy, we press Control and then we drag things, right? Otherwise, it moves. So I would put some kind of keyboard shortcuts that are useful to developers that they eventually anyway use in the sandbox, right? Let's say Control S is save, Command S is save, right? Control C, Control V is something that works regardless. Copy commands and stuff like that. So again, this is future. This is maybe an enhancement. But other than that, yeah. But I think that mostly covers File Explorer, in my opinion.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else that you wanted to highlight in another part?
Yeah, I'm getting to it. Maybe deployment integrations is something that we can get a little deeper into, right? How do you end up deploying things? So because it's an online editor and because the browser does not have from without permission to change things at a file system level. So every change that you make in a file, or you add, delete things, basically any of the file system, whatever, any of the changes that you make have to flow to the server, right? And the server has to now build it, and it has to deploy it, and that deployment has to show up in your preview. So that full integration has to show. So there is a build system, right? Actually, there is an update system, update the server of any client changes, right? And then the server listens to it. It builds it. It then, after building, it then deploys it, because it is basically able to serve deployment system. And then the preview, auto refresh preview, something like that. Yeah. Deployment system, build system. And then this is where I will want to discuss a little bit on the tech choices. Okay, how do I update my server? What kind of build systems do I have? How do I deploy it, and how do I auto refresh? So things like that. Do I use?
We'll be diving into those in the tech choices when we'll be coming into. I think this is a very pretty much good list that we have created right now in terms of the functional and non-functional, and we have pretty much scoped very well over here. So let's dive into the tech choices. In this episode, we have covered the functional and the non-functional requirement of the CodeSandbox. In the upcoming part 2 of this episode, we'll be covering in-depth tech stack and the implementation detail of the CodeSandbox, like how real-time preview is working over here, right? So what are the different options for creating this online ID? What are the getting more into the detail of the tech choices basically we have in terms of the tech stack that we are going to choose, right? So how debugging basically works on the online ID, and much more in terms of the implementation. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe the video and the channel, and see you in the next episode. Chakde.